And the last game on this episode is Warmachine.
Designed by Mike McVey, Brian Snoddy, and Matt Wilson, artist, a whole plethora, and it's published by Privateer Press and Edge Entertainment.
I don't know what that is.
Yeah, but it's on there.
Yeah, Privateer Press.
Privateer Press, yes,
Yeah.
I knew that, but
I don't know what the other one is. I've been out of the game for a little bit here. So, Eric. Finally got a game in with Eric. We'll come back to that, though. If you're not familiar with Warmachine, it is a miniature combat game set in a skirmish level. So you got probably between 15 and 25 models, although there are rules to play a lot more than that, but that is the typical. And the idea behind this game is you're playing, it's a hobby miniature game, so you do have to put the miniatures together. You have to paint them. You move on a table using rulers, and you roll dice. You have a army that you build out of one of the factions of the game, and you choose a warcaster, which is your king. So this game is very free-flowing chess-like. If your king dies, your warcaster, you lose the game. It doesn't matter how much you did, you lose. There are scenarios that you can play, but that rule is still always in effect. Typically, there's very few instances where it's not. Otherwise, there is a scenario objective where you will usually try to control areas for so long, and if for each of these that you control each round, you might get a point, in first person 7 points. So there's always secondary objectives with the scenarios, but typically it's kill the other person's caster. You build a war group, and I'm only talking about Warmachine. This is compatible fully with Hordes, which takes place in the same world, but it's like the more primitive and tribal races that have trollkins and dragons and stuff like that. This one specifically is a bunch of humans of different factions that are building warjacks, which looks like mech warrior type things, but they're steampunk. And you're going to build your army kind of around those. So your warcaster generates what's called focus. In your focus, say for instance, Commander Striker or whatever in Signar, he can generate 6 focus each round. So at the beginning of the round, after you put your dudes on the map or whatever on the board, you play on a 4 foot by 4 foot area. Player 1 is going to start the round, and they're going to move everything they have. They activate everything. Everything can move first and then do an action, which is typically to attack. After you've done everything that is your turn, it's the other player's turn to do all their stuff. The first thing you do on your turn is you can take your focus and give it out to your different warjacks, and that's going to allow them to to do different things like boost their damage capability or boost their to hit roll if they're attacking something that's really dodgy. You can also boost to do extra attacks, but if you keep the focus, you can use it to cast spells. Each caster has their own list of spells that they can cast as well. They can also boost their attack and damage rolls and stuff. Everything in this game is 2 6-sided dice added together with another stat. It has to equal or exceed somebody else's stat. So if you want to hit somebody, you take your attack value of your melee or ranged attack, you roll 2 6-sided dice, and it has to equal or exceed the player's defense. Once you do that, then you get to roll damage. Same way, you roll the power of your weapon plus 2 6-sided dice, and then minus their armor. That's how many points of damage they take. Most people have just either 1 hit point if they're like a small human, or they will have a couple of hit points in a bar. But the warjacks actually have a damage grid that you're going to roll a 6-sided die to determine which column the damage goes to, and it's going to go top down. And it's representative of the fact that you might be hitting the left arm of the warjack or the right arm or its movement or whatever. And if you destroy those systems, because some of those boxes actually have L's for left arm, once it's destroyed, then you're going to damage that system of whatever it's carrying in its left arm, and it's going to not be able to use it as well. Now, we did play the second Mark II version of the game. Mark III is actually out now. It's just I haven't fully read the rulebook recently, and I was way more familiar with 2nd edition. There's a decent amount of changes, but it doesn't really negate the experience. It actually makes it more, it focuses it more on a warjack-centric army, whereas before you can kind of run a lot of infantry if you want. That's neither here nor there. But that's the game. You move around. You use every character has their own character card that you put in a sleeve, and you draw erase on their hit points and stuff. Tons of spells, tons of abilities, a lot to learn.
Indeed.
And I'm going to get Eric's opinion on the podcast because I've asked him, but he wasn't really dove into it. First off, tell us why we've played this game.
Oh, yeah. Well, I guess it came by getting someone else's, collection. I'm not sure if it's a big collection or a small collection. But they had...
It's decent. It's like 75 models.
Yeah, 75 models.
Across 2 different factions.
We actually didn't end up playing with that collection anyway. I could have busted those out. Tim already has painted ones. Most of the ones I got weren't painted. Some are painted, not so well, but, they're usable. So it was my first experience in it. Tim said it was going to be a 45-minute game. We played a couple, leave by 10, go to my house, play other games. That didn't happen. We were here until like 4 a.m.
It's a lot to learn. There is an investment to this game.
Yes, I would say it is a investment both in resources, because you do have to buy, I think a lot of the units come, you buy one specific unit or one specific squad. So you gather up different squads or units together. And then you might play, and you want to try out another group or another unit. So you have to go out and get that and put it together and paint it. But I think that also probably heightens your experience playing the game. You put a lot more time and commitment into it.
That's true. I agree. Yeah. So it's a hobby game. Obviously, you buy one dude. And at retail, he might be $10.
Mm-hmm.
You glue him together, you paint him, but then you plop him out on the battlefield, bam! And this dude's painted, and you're like, "Come at me, bro!" Because it does provide some sort of intimidation factor when somebody brings a fully painted army that's painted really well. Even if it's not painted really well, it's still impressive because they have commitment,
right?
Or they have a lot of money. So anyway, about the actual game experience, because I think Matt's probably heard way more than this because he's been around a lot longer.
Yeah.
But I think I amp it up a lot. Like I put it on this high pedestal, and it sometimes some people might be like, "Is it really that good?" So what did you think?
It was good. I really did enjoy myself. I do see that there is, if you want to go into it, I think you have to put some time and effort into it, and it can't just be a one-off thing. If you're just going to do it for a one-off game.
Yeah, borrow somebody's stuff.
Yeah, play with someone else's stuff or play it at a convention or something. So it is something that, if you wanted to get into, you're going to make that more of a commitment. A board game, you might buy it for $20 or $30 or whatever. You play it once, it sits on your shelf, and that's fine. But I think this, might take up more room, more time, more commitment. So you're either almost all in, or not all in, but you got to put more with a hobby game. You got to put a little bit more commitment than you would, because if you're playing it at home, not only do you need all that stuff, but you also need like the templates and the tokens and the dice. I mean, that stuff you can kind of use whatever. And the paints and the glues.
And the glues and the terrain. And the space to play it. Which you can use books and stuff like that. But I went all out for Eric.
Yeah.
I laid out this table. If you're interested, there's pictures on our Instagram and our Facebook page. But basically, I put all the cool stuff out that I had that I actually made. We tried to play with fully painted armies, except for one squad that I was using. I was playing Cricks. And, because it doesn't really amplify the experience. I mean,
it does.
I remember, Matt came over and watched me play a couple times at Gen Con when we were doing it, and that, like, it's impressive. Or I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but when you walk over and see all these people playing it.
Oh, I've always thought it was neat looking.
Yeah. It's like impressive. Man.
Even at Gen Con, they were playing Legion, I think, and all those armies were painted up really well.
Yeah.
It was impressive.
Yeah. Matt, what do you, has this ever interested you at all?
The problem is just the level of commitment it takes.
That's fair.
I would love to have a space to, even if I didn't play it, I'm interested in just painting them.
That's fair.
And that might come around at some point, but I would probably just paint them and not play them. I don't know.
I got all kinds of stuff you can paint.
We have painting parties.
Painting parties.
Come paint my stuff, man.
Well, I think if anybody's ever interested in this game, doing what Eric did is by far the best route, is to buy somebody else's collection used, because people will offload this stuff at ridiculous prices.
Just to get rid of it.
especially if it's not painted. Even if it is, there's stuff that you can do to strip the paint very easily. I think I used a product called Evergreen. Is that what it's called?
Or Simple Green.
Simple Green. Yeah.
Okay.
Don't dilute it. Put it in a bucket. Throw all the models in there. Just enough to like cover them.
Right.
Let them sit for a few days. You scrub it off with a light brush, like a toothbrush, basically. Oh man, dude, I've gotten so many models. Like $50 to $60 for like 40 guys. I think I bought all my cricks for $80, and I got maybe 60 models. It was on the level of Eric. So you can get stuff really cheap. It's just putting it together that is the hard part, I think, for people who have never done it before, because you can't just super glue things together and expect them to last. You need to learn the art of pinning them with like pinning rods if you want it to last a lot, or using what's called green stuff, which is kind of a epoxy.
Right.
That you take two parts and mix it together like
a JB Weld or something.
Yeah, it's like a clay. Yeah, modeling clay, but you use two of them, you put it together, and after 30 or 40 minutes it gets rock hard. You can sand it.
Yep.
So there's art to putting it together. And actually, you guys were talking about this, I think, after Gen Con when we did the painting, but I think more people are intimidated by painting models than they should be. It literally is a 3D coloring book.
Right. Yeah. And I had no want to actually paint anything really, and I'm not a painter or very artistic. But Gen Con 2 years ago, they had a little area where you can.
Oh, was it 2 years ago?
It was Origins.
Or was it Origins?
Yeah, it was Origins.
Either one of those places. They had an area that you can come up and they had the paint, and they give you a miniature to paint. And yeah, I enjoyed my time. So I really enjoyed it. So that's one of the reasons why I decided to pick up, that lot.
Yeah. Now, so getting back to the actual gameplay though, were you more impressed, or did you kind of play and expected it to work out like that? Because like it's complex.
Right. I would say I was more impressed, but I didn't go in with it with a lot of
expectations.
Yeah, low expectations. Not that I didn't expect much from it, but I didn't really know what to expect.
That's fair.
There is a lot to every different army, and I think the learning curve on it. Of course, if you go out and go to a tournament, you're going to need to know a lot.
You need to know a lot. Yeah.
Before being able to do that. Right.
Yes. Yeah. Because you can't just, knowing your stuff is one thing, but you also need to know what their stuff does.
And there's a lot of their stuffs.
There's a lot of their stuffs.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because every model and every unit and everything has its own stats.
Right.
So there's like certain common abilities that are shared amongst things like toughness. Some people might have tough, other people might have tough. But some of them have unique abilities that you're not going to run across except for those couple of models. And so, man, it just makes the game incredibly deep because even though you see what they bring at the table and you can read all their cards, there's no hidden information in the game at all. You still don't know what they are planning to do with it unless you are just superbly good at knowing everything that you can do. So, I don't know. Really cool. How did you like the faction you played? You actually played the Signar faction, which is my primary faction. And then your other thing were the Troll Bloods, but we haven't gotten those to it because I figured it would be best for us to both play Warmachine first before we did Hordes.
Right, because there's a small differences, but they can be combined together.
Yes.
Or not really combined together, but played against each other.
Yes. Well, even combined to a degree because certain characters can cross faction. But anyway, so what did you think?
Yeah, I liked it a lot. We had a lot of warjacks on the field. So all of them, kind of specialized almost in specific stuff. So
we didn't even get into the good part where you can pick up each other's warjack and throw it. And
yeah, was that an option?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we didn't. Yeah,
I didn't, you know what? The first game I kind of left some things out, but yes, a warjack can go up to another warjack as long as it has an open fist. Which your Ironclad had his hammer and he had an open fist. His open fist you can actually grab onto another model, pick it up, and throw it at another model.
That would be awesome.
And which it would knock it down or do other things. You can, in the past versions you can do a little bit more, but there's other things you can trample across like little dudes because it just starts running through a group of guys, just swinging wildly and hitting everybody. So there's a lot of cool things you can do. There's a lot of very intricate, like situations.
Charging, for instance.
Well, yeah, charge is a pretty common thing, but
Mm-hmm.
like the throw is a good throw can change the tide of a game.
Oh, really?
Now, the last question I had, because I didn't really ask you too much, we just did it. But Eric actually was doing pretty decent. I mean, obviously I was pointing some stuff out or whatever, but he did pretty decent. It came down to where I only had my caster.
Mm-hmm.
He had like all 3 of his war jacks and some other stuff.
Yeah.
And I walked in, his guy was exposed, and I was just
Right.
like, boom, 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 win the game.
Yeah.
What
Learning
do-
experience.
Right. No, for
Right.
sure. But what do you think of that aspect? Because it is very chess-like, because
Right.
now your other stuff is just instant dead,
Yeah, exactly.
which actually,
No, I didn't mind that because, like you said, it is, you still have a chance. You got one guy left. Of course, if it's your main warcaster.
which it'll always be, because if it's
right, he's
dead,
your-
you lose.
Right. So even though you're maybe outmanned, you still can maneuver around and possibly get the win.
Yeah, that's fair. And thematically, it does make somewhat sense. A warcaster is actually controlling all those warjacks.
Mm-hmm.
So if it dies, they don't do anything.
Ah.
You know what I mean? They've got very little autonomous about them. They're not combat ready unless they are paired with a warjack or a warcaster to actually fight.
Mm-hmm.
So if the warcaster is knocked unconscious or whatever, then or maybe not that, but as long as they are dead, then their warjacks just don't do anything. So
Gotcha.
it makes sense thematically to a degree. Obviously, you still have other units and things, but the idea is they were going to run from the battle, because if
Right.
a warcaster dies in front of you, you are not killing that thing.
Right.
You're gone. You're out of here. So, yeah, I don't know. You looking forward to playing it again?
Oh, yeah.
Man, we got to get you to try it out.
I'll try it.
I got plenty of stuff. I don't know if you can see it in this video, but I have cabinets of stuff. I have, I think, just over 1,000 models.
It sounds like a marker calendar kind of deal, but
Yeah.
Well, the first time, yes.
Yeah, the first time.
When we used to play it all the time, and I've probably played hundreds of matches, we would get together and then we would play it 3 to 4 times in one night. So, we would get together after work, the same thing, like, 6 to like midnight type of deal, and we would
Right.
play it 3 or 4 times. So you can play.
Like 2 hours a game then.
No, I mean, because we would have to like reset up each game and stuff, and you might want to change around all the scenario and change around the terrain and everything. So there's a little bit of, and there's a lot of talking between games. You're like, oh, that was awesome when you did this or whatever,
Yeah.
kind of like watching a sporting event, and afterwards you're talking about the plays. But I forgot what I was gonna say. Yeah, anyway. Yeah, we would play a couple of games a night.
Uh-huh.
And I remember what I was going to say. In tournaments, typically you have 45 minutes. In 45 minutes, you would think is crazy, but it is actually plenty of time for 2 experienced players to finish a match. What do you think about trying hardcore mode, 7-minute turns?
That's crazy. Which 7 minutes actually sounds like that's a long time. But when you have, 20 something guys to move around, it takes a while.
Yeah. I was gearing up to play that, and then we got into board games.
Ah.
So I was actually doing it and doing well, at least locally with people.
Mm-hmm.
But we have some pretty ballin' Warmachine players that win Gen Con tournaments and stuff.
Nice.
So I was teaming up with I was being trained by the best, or at least some of the best. So yeah, super good. I'm looking forward to playing it more. Rachel's like, you're pumped because I'm like reading everything. I'm like, Dom, this is awesome. Yeah, I'm super pumped. Anyway, any final thoughts?
No, I liked it.
Cool. That is Warmachine.